Policy Matters. Policy Matters is a conversation platform which aims to provide reasoned analysis and content to the activities, reforms and policies of the federal government of Ethiopia.
Tesfahun Gobezay, thank you so much for joining us here and making time to undertake this important interview. Let's just begin by talking about the security sector hiccups, problems that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has been talking about when he was addressing the parliament the other day. He said Ethiopia's security sector, including the intelligence services, the National Defense Force and the others, were generally operating unconstitutionally against the law and perhaps against also the very reason why they were formed. He was mentioning several problems, including in the National Defense Force, people were assigned with no quota system, or even favoritism was there all the time. The intelligence services were working against the people themselves, torturing, imprisoning people and the others. But in a nutshell, Tesfahun, what do you really make of the Prime Minister's explanation of the security sector problems?
Okay, thank you for having me, Groom. This is a very important topic that we should discuss. Overall, for the past 3 years, security sector reform has been made. A lot of efforts has been made in reforming the security sector, but it's not well communicated. So this would give us a chance to communicate what has been done, what has been achieved, and what has been lacking. So as the Prime Minister was addressing the Parliament, there were a lot of problems in the security sector. First, there was a gross human rights violation, which is unconstitutional. In the Ethiopian Constitution, the only rights that is guaranteed 100%, that has no exception, is human security or body security. But our security organizations were violating it to the core. So there were tortures, there were mass surveillance, and a lot of problems were occurring with respect to human rights violation. Secondly, there was lack of professionalism. The security sector and professionals working in that sector doesn't have a good professional capacity, so that they were relying on more on physical abuse and mental torturing of anyone whom they suspected. Thirdly, there was also a lack of constitutionalism and accountability. As it is enshrined in the Constitution, every agency or organization that's established in this country has to be accountable, has to be responsible for the parliament, but the security sector, including the military, were not accountable. No auditing, no performance auditing, no accounting is made in regard to how they spend their finances. And there's also a narrow understanding of national security. National security was understood as a regime security. So these organizations were there to protect the regime from its people, not to protect the people of Ethiopia. So they solely focus on regime security, and they would do anything that they deem is a potential threat to the regime.
Tesfahun, the Prime Minister said, from his personal point of view as well, when he was talking about how serious the problem of the security sector was, even the intelligence services were working against the idea of a self-relying Prime Minister, a person who needs to take the country to the next level, and they were also manipulating almost every region in the country. What does this mean to you? What was the TPLF-led network, if you like, was trying to achieve through this?
Okay. Security in general, throughout the world, security organizations are aggressive in their nature. They have a lot of budget, they have a lot of reason to hide things because they can claim that it's a national secret. So they tend to be rogue. So what keeps or what checks them is the establishment of rule of law and check and balance. So there has to be a strong oversight by Parliament, by civil service organizations, and also by Human Rights Commission. But in our case, all three were weak. The media is very weak, and even it can't pass through the road of the national security. The parliament was disabled from checking them, so there is no way of guaranteeing that they are working under the law. So in general, we can say that they are legal or organizational monsters. Mm-hmm. So that's why they were able to manipulate and do a lot of gross things.
Mm-hmm. On his parliament address again, the Prime Minister, when he was explaining the importance of the security sector reform, he said, in order to save the country from perhaps total chaos due to the ongoing conflicts, he mentioned 112 and 113 of them being sponsored by perhaps the leadership in the north. He said they were doing lots of works to reform perhaps the military itself, the intelligence services, and even organizations like INSA and the others, so that the Ethiopian national sovereignty can also be protected by them. What were the vital measures taken, according to the Prime Minister's speech as well, that were taken to achieve the reform in the security sector?
So the first thing that was carried out is really shifting the concept of national security. National security is changing from time to time, and nowadays the most common conceptualization of national security is understanding it as a human security. So you will shift your center from the region to the citizens. So when you care about human security, it means you have to care about their rights, their well-being, their overall safeguarding, and their overall well-beingness. So it's not about physical security. It's not only about physical security. It's not only about regime security, but it is all inclusive, and it includes social, economic, overall well-being of a nation. So the first thing that we took is changing the concept of national security from regime-centered to citizen-centered understanding. Secondly, we took a lot of effort in increasing the capability of the staff. So a lot of training institutions were established. Those who were in practice were also improved in a lot of senses. New paradigms were added to the training manuals. So it was more or less a human capacity building exercise. Then ensuring accountability was the third priority. That means, as I said earlier, the national security apparatus would be in check if there is a very much effective oversight from the Parliament, from Human Rights Commission, and other respective organs. So there should be a very much tight and well-designed check and balance. In that effect, the Parliament was really empowered in overseeing the practices of the military, even the national security sector, and other intelligence community organizations.
Let's just take it a bit to a deeper form of our discussion, and let's just review the Ethiopian National Defense Force. They are tasked to protect the sovereignty of the country. They are loyal to the Constitution, and they are also expected to deliver this by the book. Unfortunately, and this is also according to the Prime Minister's speech, Tesfahun, he said the so-called Red Book, for example, which was governing almost every activity of the National Defense Force, depicts the fact that the National Defense Force are tasked to protect revolutionary democracy, while at the same time the Constitution was saying that no party or regime or political leadership should be protected by the ENDF. How paradox is this, really?
Okay. So, as the Prime Minister was saying, the Red Book, the so-called book called Red Book, is in stark opposition to the Constitution of the FDRE. In the Constitution, at Article 87, there are 5 provisions about the Defense Ministry. The first is it says it should be representative of all nations and nationalities. Second, it says it should be led by a civil minister. Third, it says it should protect the nation, not anything else. And fourth, it says the army should work with no affiliation, political affiliation. So when we see the Red Book in this regard, it is in stark opposition to these provisions. First, it says in blatant terms that the army is guardian of the party. And it equates revolutionary democracy to the mere existence of the nation. So it says if revolutionary democracy is in danger, it means the nation is in danger. And the nation wouldn't survive without revolutionary democracy. So it really depicts the army to be a real guardian of the ideology that was portrayed by EPRDF. Secondly, it says the National Defense Force should be comprised from those who benefit a lot from revolutionary democracy. It categorizes Ethiopian people into three categories. First, it says those who benefit a lot from revolutionary democracy, they should be the first to be included in the military. Second, there are those who get leftovers of revolutionary democracy advantages. They should be given minimal roles. And thirdly, there are those who is in adverse relation with revolutionary democracy, or those who are in disadvantage due to revolutionary democracy. And the book says that the army shouldn't include these people. So the constitution is saying that the army should be representative of the diversity of the country, but while the Red Book is saying that the army should primarily be comprised of those who benefit a lot from revolutionary democracy, and those second beneficiaries should be given some supportive roles.
So in this regard, just to give you a perspective, the Prime Minister was mentioning, perhaps it could help our conversation. He was saying that, say for instance, certain group, the Tigray regional state people, or people who were born there, get the higher rank. And he was mentioning even categories of how many generals, of them, perhaps 99% of them come from one region, when Ethiopia is a multinational state. He was talking about the second rank, and even at the lower level, he was talking about this abnormality, if you like. What do you really make of that?
Yeah, as the Prime Minister was saying, the higher ranks of the military are unproportionally in favoring some group. So the question is, how did this come? How did this happen? Is it by accident? Is it by luck? Is it by coincidence? Is it because some people are brave to fight and some are not? No, it's not. It's by design. Because the book has said that the military should be primarily comprised of those who benefit from revolutionary democracy. So that's a design. And so the point is, unless you change this training manual and unless you change this document, you would not get anything. You would not move any further. As the Prime Minister was saying, if you remove 4 generals, then you will get other 4 generals from the same thing. So there should be a very dramatic and a very fundamental change. That.
So as you've said, coming to the reform side of the National Defense Force, it was based on the problems that you've been mentioning. Also, the Prime Minister mentioned them. And he was addressing the fact that there were so many things that were done when it comes to reforming the Ethiopian National Defense Force, from composition to even modernizing the army, the mentality itself, and for it to even follow its constitutional mandates. So what were really the major works done, and how fruitful were they?
Yeah, just before going to what measures we took, let me add some of the problems that were in the army. First, as I said, the training manual is really unconstitutional. Secondly, there was a problem of bad fame. The military was being portrayed as abusive. I'm not talking about the military as a whole. I'm talking about some leadership and some actors that portray the army as a merciless force. So when the army goes to a certain place to solve an issue, whether it is an inter-regional issue or a regional issue that is beyond the capacity of the region, the regional authorities would call for the army to evacuate their region. That's a bad thing. To call your army to go out of your region is a real problem. So there were a lot of problems within the party. Secondly, there was a problem of accountability, financial corruption. There is a lot of resource in the military, as you may know. There is budget. We are the second largest peacekeeping nation in the world, so we have a lot of budget coming from peacekeeping, and we also have industries, military industries. So these all are embezzled. So there was a lot of corruption and there was a lot of bad fame to the army. This is also another problem. Then there is also another problem on recruitment, retention, and resettlement. There is a study carried out by the Defense Minister. It shows how the Defense Ministry was working for 9 consecutive years. First, in the recruitment area, there was a plan to recruit 20,000 every year, but the defense was able to recruit only 106 out of 180,000 plans. Secondly, on retaining, there was a lot of leaving. For example, let me just give you some numbers. 106,105 personnel have left the defense. From this, 51,000 was defection, 8,651 was discipline, and 25,572 were retired. So the net gain for the military in terms of personnel for the last 9 months before the reform was only 730. So there was a lot of outflowing. We have a team has studied the reasons for this defection and leaving the army. And it found out that one of the highest reasons is corruption and misadministration. So
there was a lot of frustration,
yes,
from the members of the army when it was supposed to be, perhaps as we see in other countries and even in our country, a means of pride to serve your country. That was not the case due to the time issue that we have. Tesfahun, let's just come to the major works done, and then I'll perhaps forward my last question, which is the general security sector reform, more particularly on the intelligence sector. So what were the most particular jobs done to reform, modernize, and make the Ethiopian National Defense Force an army that the people of the country can be proud of?
Okay. In this regard, what were done was just to highlight the main areas. First, the proclamation was reinstated. So there was a very a long process of studying the proclamation, and a new proclamation was issued by the parliament. Then a new regulation was issued by the Ministry of the Council of Ministers. And then the strategy was changed. As I said, it was the fundamental source of all the problems that we see in the army. So the new proclamation, the new strategy clearly states that the party is a non-political arena. So anyone who is joining the army is leaving the politics aside. So the army as an institution should not be affiliated to any party. So that was clearly set out in the strategy. Second, it clearly sets out that the army should be a professional army. So it should have the technology, the necessary modernizations, and it should also work on technical capability. So this was also made. Then to ensure that there is accountability in the army, a very much effective oversight, and both internal and external oversight was established.
What about from the being inclusive side of it? Because earlier you've mentioned also, based on the Prime Minister's speech, he was saying that from the top to the bottom, works perhaps tiring, but very much exhaustive works have been done to perhaps duplicate the face of Ethiopia in the army. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the army would be an Ethiopian army if it reflects Ethiopia in its entirety. So a lot has been done to make sure that that happens. So from the very lowest rank to up to the highest rank, there was a thorough auditing of personnel. There is a thorough auditing of who is who and what capabilities he has, what capabilities he lacks. So for those what he is lacking, the training organizations were ordered to work exhaustively and to work in a swift manner, so that capabilities would be built sooner than later. So this ensured to work on bringing an inclusive army and someone that reflects the true diversity of the country.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps we're coming to the conclusion of our conversation here today, Tesfahun. You have experience of perhaps not only working on the security sector itself in different parts in the country, but also being one of the top advisors for the Prime Minister of the country when it comes to the security sector, working on the reform itself as well. And one of the most significant areas the Prime Minister was talking about where problems were reflected was the intelligence sector, the community itself in general terms. It could be the national security services, it could be on the network services, network security services and the others. What was the biggest problem there that you see based on PM Abiy's speech, and what were done to perhaps correct the problems?
Okay. The intelligence community comprises 5 agencies, independent agencies: National Security and Intelligence Service, NIS, Information Network Security Agency or INSA, Financial Intelligence Center, FIC, Federal Police as law enforcer and also as intelligence community. So all these have the problems that we see in the military. There was a gross human rights abuse, especially in the NIS. They were acting roguely, they were acting over the law, and they were just invincibles to the law. They were not accountable for any law that was in this country. Secondly, there was also misuse of resources because there is no accountability and there is no check and balance between the 3 government organs. There was a lot of embezzlement and a lot of corruption. Lack of professionalism is also one of the problems they face. For example, NIS has a clear rule that its staff cannot learn MA. So it goes to this level because when they learn, they will be professionals and they will do their work professionally. But when they don't learn, they will act as they are ordered. Mm-hmm. So there was a clear order ordering the employees not to learn. The other is just to give you also one data. There were 2,063 people that were blacklisted without any law court order. So these 2,063 people, what did they do? It's not known because it's not the case was not brought to the court, but they were blacklisted, and if they come or if they want to go out, they would be sent to prison for no reason at all.
This issue was more elaborated, as I was saying earlier, by the Prime Minister when he was talking about his personal account, how he was mishandled as a Prime Minister of this big country. And it's obviously understandable. Some people say that normal citizens could face even worse than this. So to correct all of these problems, mass killings, atrocities being committed by the intelligence services, blacklisting and others, because there are so many people who are barred from entering to their country, as the Prime Minister was saying as well. So what were the great jobs, as some people might mention them, done to correct the issues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was no institutional capability. Just that's the case that was in In the case of NIS and other intelligence communities, the power was vested on some people and on some individuals. So that when they left or when they stopped working, it becomes an empty house or building. So what we did was to reform the whole intelligence community as a package. Since most of them are under Ministry of Peace, it gave us a chance to implement a committee level and working together, leading operations simultaneously. So it became more and more clear for us to review that these intelligence agencies have a lot of problems. First, what we did is mission clarity, clarifying the mission of every agency so that it would not act beyond and it would not act apart from its mission. Secondly, working together was ensured. As I said, these agencies, their relation really depends on the relation of the leaders. If they are in good terms, they will have a good relation. If they are in bad terms, they will close their doors. But this is not how you protect a nation. This is not how you protect a country. So there should be guidelines, there should be procedures as to how to work together. There should be clear guidelines and there should be clear restrictions. For example, there were political institutions. The leaders were political leaders. We can mention the Director General of NIS was the Politburo member of EPRDF. So you can't expect political neutrality from such institutions. So making them non-political was one of the great achievements of this reform.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tesfahun Gobezay, it was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much once again for making time to speak to us here, and I appreciate the response that you've given us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Policy Matters